there is this psychological limit
Mhm.
where I can kind of wait 2 seconds. But if I go much past that, I'm like, I got to go do something else now. If you want to develop on Solana, but have users come from Base and Arbitrum, you need that 2 second bridge experience. Otherwise, normal users are just going to be like, this takes too long. I'm going to move on and do something else.
Hart Lambur is the co-founder of UMA and Across Protocol, building decentralized infrastructure to scale Ethereum. With UMA's optimistic oracle and Across bridging billions in value, Hart is pushing DeFi to compete with traditional finance. What role does the intent system play in Ethereum? And then how do you think that can be applied to this integration with interoperability in mind?
This intent architecture that Across has really helped pioneer makes everything fast by having third-party solvers fill the intent on your behalf with their own money. And then the system and the protocol does the verification on the back end to keep user funds safe.
Today, we're not just talking about Across's expansion in Ethereum, we're diving into the latest Solana announcement as well, which we will get to in a second. With all that said, Hart, welcome back on.
Thanks, Jackie. Thanks for having me.
Thanks for being here. To start off, Across is launching a fast bridging solution between Solana and Ethereum L2s. Before we dive into the decision behind this, let's kind of elaborate on the why. High level, why do we even need bridges in crypto? For the people who only stay siloed to one chain, let's talk about why this matters.
I guess if you're one of those, if you're one of the people that can stay siloed on one chain, all the power to you. Yeah, impressive. It's sort of like, I remember Jack had a friend that got an iPhone, but only wanted one app on his phone. This is a long time ago.
Yeah.
Hard to do. Hard to be a one app person
What was
on your
that?
iPhone. He wanted Hinge, but then he had to be a two app guy.
Oh my gosh.
Or Tinder. This is way back. He wanted
Yeah.
Tinder, but he had to be a two app guy because he needed Facebook to get a Tinder account. So he had to be a two app guy.
Wow. Wow.
Yeah.
Sorry, total side quest here. Yeah. Back to bridges. Yeah.
To bridges. You can't be a one chain guy or girl anymore. It's just not possible. There's too much going on. There's too many incentives and too many interesting things happening in different corners of the crypto space. And so, you need a way to move your money, move your assets between these chains. I think we'll talk more about this as we get into the conversation. Of course, we want all these chains to fade into the background. We want it to all feel like just one thing, like one internet you're using. But we're not quite there yet, and these different blockchains are real, and we need a really seamless and fast way to move between them. So Across has been pushing this kind of fast bridging narrative, this like we got to make all the Ethereum L2s talk to each other in 2 seconds. We need to make it feel like Ethereum is one network, one chain. But like our friends at Solana, we can talk about the Solana Ethereum wars here, but our friends at Solana have done a real service of onboarding a lot of like new crypto users into the crypto space. And if you're an Ethereum fan, you still want those Solana people to come try out Ethereum land and vice versa. So creating a fast, seamless connection between them feels like it's critical if we're going to have crypto as a whole grow.
I think that goes into my next follow-up question is like what was the decision behind this? Because obviously there's a bunch of other chains out there that you guys could have expanded to, but why did Across decide to expand beyond Ethereum to Solana specifically? Maybe it's because they have, a fair amount of liquidity there. Aside from that, are there other reasons that you guys kind of went that route?
If you look at the type of applications, type of users we have, like what are they most likely to use outside of Ethereum? I think it is Solana and the SVM ecosystem. For us, it was a big lift because we had to write in a different VM. So the EVM, the Ethereum virtual machine, is something that Across is supported now and supported really well for its lifetime. Writing for the Solana virtual machine was like a new lift for us. And, it's pretty interesting, actually. Our engineer is super competent, but they learned some new tricks, which they found fun and enjoyable. It's our first non-EVM ecosystem that we've brought Across and the intent-based bridging protocol too. I think it's just got real growth and real traction, real metrics. Some of that, like we can talk about whether the meme coin kind of fad is fading and whether that means Solana will get a little bit less interesting in the near term. I'm not really a believer. I think Solana believer of that statement. I think Solana's done a really good job creating a really friendly user experience. Phantom Wallet, I think, has been an amazing onboarding experience for a lot of users into crypto. And I think being able to connect Solana users to Ethereum and vice versa, it just makes a lot of sense.
Mhm.
Um, we are looking to go to other ecosystems too, and there'll be more announcements there in the coming weeks and months. And we're looking to kind of increase the pace at which Across can connect to more ecosystems a
Mhm.
lot in the coming quarter or two. But yeah, Solana just felt like a necessary step.
Mhm.
And I guess I'd also say just personally, like I've followed Solana from for a long time. It's so interesting to see that arc of like the kind of being the SBF chain and its whole like FTX and then the utter crash into darkness and despair. And then the rebound of like real builders, I think building some innovative stuff. Even though, I'm Ethereum partial, I've been building in Ethereum space for a while. I think the Solana team just deserves a lot of respect for
Mhm.
how they've built for the long haul.
I think it's interesting that you brought up the expansion to other chains as well, because I see this as like a pretty obvious first step that like outside of Ethereum and Ethereum L2s, the next one would probably be Solana and then other major or up and coming L1s, maybe the Move ecosystem as well. Your engineers are going to have to learn Move beyond
Yeah.
the EVM, the SVM, and then the Move one. But there's definitely a lot of interoperability that needs to happen across these different ecosystems. It shouldn't just be siloed to Ethereum, right? Is that how you think about it
Exactly.
too?
Exactly. It makes a lot of sense from Ethereum's perspective that you want Ethereum and its L2s to feel like one network.
Mhm.
So for Cross to start there and try to help Ethereum solve that problem, I think that also makes a lot of sense. Like let's try to make Ethereum feel like one chain. But then, you go a step further and it's like, okay, well, I want to make all the chains feel like one chain too. So I want to be able to seamlessly move between Solana and Ethereum applications without any issues. The same is true for Move and all that kind of stuff. It gets a little bit more complicated when you have different chain architectures. Maybe they're not going to feel quite as seamless. Like maybe you have to have a different wallet for Solana than you
Right.
do for Ethereum. And so there's still like little bits of friction there. But like, in the long arc, we play this forward a year or two, I do think we're going to keep making progress where the chains become the underlying infrastructure. In the same way that, if you're a user going to a website, you don't know if Google Cloud is hosting it or if AWS is hosting it.
Right.
Like, don't care. Right.
100%. And you want Across to kind of help be the bridge between these chains that are the underlying networks.
Yeah, exactly.
Mhm. Yeah. And then looking at the bigger picture, I think a lot of times people feel like it's black and white between Solana and Ethereum or whatever chain they're obsessed with. You're on one side or the other. What's your take on that? Do you think that era is kind of over or we're still in that and this maybe could help people migrate into maybe a more open-minded thinking?
We're in pretty partisan times right now, Jackie. So I don't know that people are in the mood to bury the hatchet and make nice right now. I find myself in the minority that's just like, hey, I think that these are all useful and interesting technologies. The one point that I really do want to make to both like Solana and to Ethereum and to like Cosmos and to Move people, like these different ecosystems do have different flavors, do focus on different things, and competition is good. It pushes them to do things better. I think Solana would probably, maybe I'll get critiqued for this, but I bet Solana would be even more centralized than it is if it wasn't for the vibes of Ethereum and focusing on decentralization. And I bet Ethereum's UX wouldn't be as much of a focus if it wasn't for Solana being like focus on the user, more TPS, more fast transactions. Like the the qualities of each of these ecosystems that they're pushing are different, but then they force everyone to compete and learn from each other. And I think that's
Mhm.
like super powerful and super beneficial
Yeah.
for the whole space.
And how do you kind of see this opening up the door for builders on both sides of the spectrum? You talked about how for your engineers, they had to learn SVM, they were EVM engineers, and now we have Ethereum builders and Solana builders, maybe not having to do that, and they could just say, hey, if you're in this ecosystem, you could tap into us and vice versa?
I think like when it comes to building your DApp or your application, you're gonna still have to pick a VM. And I think that's gonna be true for a while. Um, but I think that when you're a developer and you're like, okay, where should I build? One of the considerations that you previously had is like, okay, well, where's the liquidity? Like, where are the users? Um, and I think it's very healthy if we can actually remove that consideration and instead be like, wait, what is the technology that fits my application best? Is it
Right.
better built as a Solana app versus an Ethereum app? And not have to worry about where the users are because something like a cross would make it so simple to get users from any of those ecosystems to come into your application. So that's really the vision of the pitch here.
Mhm.
So like you would have a user that wants to build a meme coin trading venue, they pick the best infrastructure to build that on. And then users across crypto can get there in 2 seconds for low cost to go and actually use that application.
I think that maybe answers my next question, Harp. I was going to ask how this improves the user experience. Just
Yeah,
faster,
faster.
easier, right? Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I've been repeating this on, I mean, probably on our last podcast too, but you know, there is this psychological limit
Mhm.
where I can kind of wait 2 seconds for something. Two
Mhm.
seconds kind of goes by and my attention span is there. But if I go much past that, I'm like, I gotta go do something else now. And
So
there's lots
true.
of like research and like web browsing UX, which is why websites really try to load inside 2 seconds. Otherwise, the user just is like, we'll close the tab and move on.
Yeah.
And so the experience that like we really care about at Across is how do we get that 2 second bridging experience? And you know, we're gonna have that going between Base and Arbitrum and Solana. Like we're now gonna have these 2 second bridges feels instant or practically instant.
Mhm.
And I think that user experience, if you want to develop on Solana, but have users come from Base and Arbitrum, you need that 2 second bridge experience. Otherwise, normal users are just going to be like, this takes too long. I'm going to move on and do something else.
Mhm. How long do you think the bridging experiences out there today are, aside from across?
There's more people that are taking some cues from across and trying to get fast. Some of them with like much weaker security assumptions, some trust assumptions.
Hmm.
But a lot of those bridging experiences are like, a minute is the better end. You look at like Circle CCTP, it's they're trying to make it faster, but it's been 20-minute bridging experiences
Wow,
for
20 is
USDC.
crazy.
Well, but they have other advantages, right? They have the
Mhm.
advantage of being able to move like mint and burn. So Circle mints the USDC so they can charge a relatively small amount on big volume. But like, okay, maybe getting a little technical. All this stuff works really nicely for a cross. So the intent-based bridging architecture that a cross has means we have these solvers front money on the destination chain, front their own money to fill a user very quickly, but then they can rebalance using something like CCTP, which in the case of the Solana integration is primarily how this works. We can use the 20-minute bridge to rebalance funds between chains when we need to. And that kind of is like the best of both worlds approach,
Mhm.
where users get these like super fast and snappy fills, and then the kind of sophisticated actors that are filling the intent in across the
Mhm.
sophisticated actors can use the slower kind of like uh, big heavy bridges to move big money.
That's kind of like how things work on the back end. The user doesn't need to know this, right?
User does not need to know this.
Nope.
Let's just get
Yeah.
abstracted away from them.
Maybe aside from speed, what else do you think makes the across bridge different from existing Solana bridges like Wormhole or something else?
Well, cost, right? Like
Mhm.
we're recording this and we've got to see how it all plays out in production. But I would anticipate we are actually going to be meaningfully cheaper than the competition that is out there. And so, bridging $1,000 to Solana, it's
Mhm.
gonna cost you like less than 50 cents type thing. And I
I
think
could
we can
afford
get
that
it.
if I'm bridging $1,000.
Low fees. They're low
Right.
fees. And that's a combination of us being like very gas efficient, and also like very capital efficient in how we do this stuff too.
Mhm.
So, um, again, I think we're working hard on both like the speed and the cost side of things, and then just having this like snappy, nice user experience that just feels good. And then, go a little bit deeper. Across also has all these very cool kind of like hook functionality features. So we can, and we're looking to have really cool integrations that will like let you bridge money over and do an action like a swap or deposit into a pool or buy an NFT, do those actions in one click. And so there's like some very cool kind of like bridge plus hook functionality that we're able to offer.
Yeah, no, that's huge. Does that even exist today? Because like I've never been given that option to do that, or maybe I just don't have the right applications like this. But I feel like it's always like you have to do one step and then you have to do the second step and then you have to make sure you have the funds. And if you don't, you got to start over back to square one. You know what I mean? So,
Like across this exists and across today for EVM chains. And it is used in some use cases. We have a
mhm.
few integrations that are kind of fun and a few more that are coming. Um, Nobody's doing this on Solana, best I know, in terms of like and it's a little bit technically complex because you're going between these different architectures. Um, and so I think it's going to be quite fun to be like, hey, uh, there's actually some pretty deep technical nuance to this too. But
Mhm.
can I sign a single message on, say, Base that will go to Solana, move my money over, and buy the meme coin that I'm interested in buying? I think we can do it, and it's going to be
Mhm.
pretty cool.
I don't know about you guys, but have you been feeling a little degenerate recently? We get it. You've always loved Ethereum security, but who wasn't tempted by those 1000% meme coin runs on Solana just a few months ago? When the next wave hits, do you really want to pick sides? Why not just position yourself for both? With Across, you no longer have to choose favorites. They've connected EVM with SVM so you can explore all your options. Now you can YOLO your hard earned staking gains into Solana meme coins, or reverse course and move your meme coin gains from Solana to Ethereum mainnet and all your favorite L2s like Optimism, Arbitrum, Base, and 20 plus more. Whether you're building or bridging, Across makes the cross chain relationship work. Because in crypto, why commit to just one chain when you can have the best of both worlds? Learn more at across.to. Have you spoken to ecosystem leads at each of these respective chains? Are they interested in this, or they like, no, I want
They
people to
are.
stay in my network and I don't want them going there and coming back?
Okay, well, this one's interesting. They're interested in getting users to come into their ecosystem. So
Exactly.
anything that I say, like if you talk to like EVM ecosystem leads and we're like, hey, we're making it easy for Solana users to come into your
They're
application.
like,
They're like,
yeah,
that's
bring
great,
them. Yeah.
right? If they also are like, okay, well, it's also gonna be easy for them to go to Solana, like less great, right?
Yeah.
Which makes sense too. And I do think, I mean, maybe I'm being too open with our strategy here, but I do think that like Across is kind of is rooted in Ethereum, in terms of just where we built our user base.
Mhm.
So I do think a lot of the early use cases for our Solana integration are going to be like Ethereum applications that are looking to bring Solana users into the
Mhm.
EVM land.
Mhm.
Um, I think there are other more kind of uh, Solana centric bridges that probably are like have a little bit more social capital in the Solana ecosystem.
Mhm.
But I think we'll whittle away at that. Like I said, I I think I've been friendly to the Solana team for a long time, and I have actually really appreciate their journey and their story. So
Yeah.
we're hopeful that we can win some hearts and minds on the Solana side too.
Yeah, for sure. I've been rooting for Solana even since they hit the price lows around $7 or $8, whatever it was. The comeback story is good. It's good. You gotta give it to them.
Yeah, that and like that move down there, I remember uh,
Mhm.
what, $14 and $9, and then you're right, like $8. You're like, oh yeah,
Mhm.
it,
It said
they
it's over. No, it's not. Well,
wasn't over.
obviously, yeah, it was not over.
Yeah.
You brought up Solana users before. I wanted to ask you, what do you think Solana, or what would entice Solana users to come and use Ethereum? Because my guess is that there's two buckets of people where it's like they were Ethereum users, and for some reason they left Ethereum and went to Solana, or they got onboarded to Solana, and then now you're suddenly trying to show them like what's possible with Ethereum apps and protocols, etc. So there's like two categories of people, the ones who left and then the ones who never were on Ethereum to begin with. So what would bring them over, you think?
I think, like, from what I know and have been told, like Phantom Wallet has had some pretty spectacular user growth, onboarding users into Solana. And like what has driven that? I mean, I do think a lot of it is meme coin trading. Um, um, so if you're the type of person that has been and also a really beautiful UX, like if you use Phantom Wallet on your mobile phone,
It's
like
easy.
it's easy. It's nice. So when I think about that, like what's the type of person that got drawn over there? Okay, they're like interested in new tech. They're maybe interested in meme coins. Um, and they really like a nice UX. Bless you. Um, they really like a nice UX. So, so I think if you had like a base app that offered similar kind of qualities, yeah, that seems like the type of thing that, and you made it one click for them to go over and try. Seems like the type of thing that would pique interest.
Mhm.
Um, uh, yeah. And then, all the other like Ethereum folk that have gone over to Solana and like want to come back, like these I think would probably be more DeFi OGs or a little bit more like whale people that are just kind of like expanding, trying out other ecosystems and all that kind of stuff too.
Mhm.
And I think for them, they literally are just like make it easier for me to bridge between these ecosystems.
Mhm.
Uh, Make it fast, simple, make it with a product that I already use and trust, like across. I think that will be really beneficial for us
Mhm.
too.
And you think Ethereum users want to go over to Solana on the flip side?
The meme coin trading on Solana was really compelling for a while, and still is. Jupiter works really well. Pump.fun is an example of an application that got crazy traction and crazy growth. Um, I think like everyone should at least try these things out because it's interesting to see what's on the other side. Um, uh, yeah, make us a little less partisan, maybe.
Fair. Last time we spoke, we also discussed intents, and you've talked about intents a little bit through this episode and the open intent framework, which I mentioned in the intro. As maybe a refresher for listeners, what role does the intents system play in Ethereum? And then how do you think that can be applied to this integration with interoperability in mind?
Good question, Jackie. So intents. What are intents again? Intents is this idea that it's like, hey, I have an intent to do something. You can keep it very general. But from a bridging or kind of interop perspective, you can say, I have 1 ETH on Arbitrum and I want at least 0.99 ETH on base. Um, Someone go and fill this. That looks like a cross-chain limit order. This intent architecture that Across has really helped pioneer makes everything fast by having third-party solvers fill the intent on your behalf with their own money, and then the system and the protocol does the verification on the back end to keep user funds safe before we repay the solver. So, okay, cool. What we've done with Ethereum wants to feel like one network again, and they need this like 2-second interop. So intents is super valuable and useful of trying to make things be very fast between all these L2s. Great. Across co-authored with Uniswap, and this is something we talked about on your podcast before. We co-authored this standard for cross-chain intents with Uniswap called ERC 7683. And then that standard has helped like been adapted and evolved into a broader initiative called the Open Intent Framework that we've been really supportive of too, that are basically trying to standardize what this structure looks like. Um, Giving you a lot of background for your users, it's all been really, really powerful and really, really well received on the Ethereum side as a way to unify Ethereum, make it feel like one network again. Great. Solana is pretty interesting because it's not an Ethereum architecture, right?
Right.
Um, and we've had since we wrote the standard with Uniswap, there's been lots of questions about like how do you take your standard for intents on Ethereum and also make it apply to Solana? And, as best we know, no one's done this before. There's never been a standard written between between two crypto
Wow.
architectures.
Right.
Um, and so it's a little interesting to think about how it works. And so we're very curious on how to do this, but I think it's going to be a little bit of a process to there
Mhm.
is no standards organization that crosses boundaries of these crypto ecosystems.
Mhm. I think the teams are going to have to get together and work on that.
Yeah, and or we just do something and we like, here's what we think is a standard, and maybe
Mhm.
people adopt it too.
Propose it. Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
so we'll see where that goes.
Maybe not to derail from the Solana announcement, but in regards to the open intents framework, how have things been since we talked about it and it launched?
Good. Like I think it's one of those things where Ethereum, I mean, look, there's so much going on in crypto prices and market and all that kind of stuff. It's like been pretty crazy last few weeks, but um Ethereum has really leaned into the fact that connecting all the blockchains is a critical problem. So um it's a this is a pitch that I've been making for 6 months now, but we've solved scalability through this roll-up architecture. It's pretty cool. If you want more scale, just add another L2. It's pretty amazing. But the sacrifice is like making it all connect and fit together.
Right.
And so the open intent framework and the simple fact that like the Ethereum Foundation, who I spent a lot of time talking about this, they're really pushing hard to find solutions that make it all feel like one chain again, which we're well positioned to do. So, a lot of interest, a lot of support, a lot of people building towards it. Um, and it's also been a great push to get the various ecosystems, so Arbitrum, Optimism, ZK Sync, all how to get them all on the same page and working and playing nice in the same sandbox. I think the OIF framework has like done a great job with that too.
I also think a word that comes to mind while you're talking about these situations, I'll call them, is fragmentation. That is something that the Ethereum community and I think the crypto ecosystem as a whole across chains, um, no pun intended, across chains, has dealt with. And so, like, fragmentation is, an easy thing that, people can understand. They feel it, they understand it from the user experience, the developer experience, etc. How do you see that kind of improving? And how would you describe like the state of fragmentation within the broader industry today? Are we getting better? I think we are.
Uh, I mean, there's potentially misaligned incentives here. Um, because like one way to have a business is like you lock people into your way of doing things.
That is so true.
And so and it's not like malicious. It's just literally people want to like have something that can accrete value. And so vendor lock-in is a very real concept that is a pretty natural state if you're trying to build a business, which people are. Um, so like it's not like everybody is building towards one single roll-up architecture. Different roll-up architectures exist. They differentiate themselves. And that's been generally good. But they fragment things when they don't do stuff all the same. So when it comes to like interoperability and bridging, we need to find a layer of abstraction that allows the fragmentation to exist in like uh, say the ecosystems themselves, but the layer of abstraction creates a unified architecture, a unified place that lets them all connect and talk to each other. And like literally that's been the intent for like our ERC 7683 standard for cross-chain intents, which I think has done that. And the kind of stuff that Across is doing, I think the intent architecture is just very well suited to be that like simple unifying abstraction layer
Mhm.
on top.
Yeah.
I don't know if that exactly answers your question though.
No, it does. It does. I think it gives people the optionality to be like, okay, I love X dApp, I love this protocol, but I also should be able to just move freely across, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. I got it. Thinking in the bigger picture, Hart, what type of opportunities do you see this Solana integration building in the near term and then the long term? Like, what is really kind of the goal here?
Near term from a Cross's perspective, we just want to uh service more chains, like keep our users happy. They can move funds quickly to the places they care to move funds to. That's like kind of the way bridging exists today. Um, and I think like also internally, it's our first like non-EVM chain. So can we learn how to do the intent thing in non-Ethereum architectures quickly? Can we get good at that? That stuff seems kind of useful and kind of cool. Um, so yeah, keep our users happy in the near term. In the long term, I think it does go back to what you were sort of talking about earlier. Um, can we have an application developer build on the technology that they think is best for their application without worrying where the users are? Like that is cool, right? And that's something that if you go and you talk to a lot of app developers today, they're like, where should I build? Should I build on Base or Arbitrum or Unichain or Solana or or should I launch my own L2? Like it's and their considerations are not purely technical. Many of their considerations are like, well, where are the users that I expect to use my app?
Mhm.
Because interop is so painful, they're like, well, if I build it on this thing that's the best technology, but the users are over there, then I'm just never going to get them to use my thing.
That's so hard. And I haven't thought about it like that, but it's so true. Like for developers, they really go where users and liquidity are, even if the best tech isn't in those categories. And I'm not saying it is or isn't. I'm just thinking about it from that perspective. And this would change kind of the way that developers can like build and then not worry about whether or not users can come and use their product because it's not on XYZ chain or whatever.
Yeah, and this is particularly acute for like the roll-up um ecosystems. I mean, again, for Ethereum too, where if you're trying to make if your sales pitch is come build a roll-up, build your own roll-up on my architecture. Um and there's all these like cool things you can do by having your own roll up. You can have your own token and you can control your own sequencing and all this other kind of stuff. Like that's all super interesting and cool and like nerd snipey. But then if you're like, uh, but it's a total pain in the ass for your users to get here, like, you
Yeah.
know, i-
Like, oh,
i-
thanks.
yeah, exactly. You're like, okay. And
Yeah.
this is where Solana like has done a good job where they're like, build your application on Solana. We have users here, and like that's it. You don't have to worry about it too. This is kind of the monolithic versus like roll-up centric architecture debate.
Hmm.
But if you solve interop and you make it really easy for users to get there, it goes away. I think. And now it's just truly like, what is the best technology to build my thing? And I'll go build it there.
Has there been any surprises while working on this, like bridging the EVM to the SVM? I know you said there was obviously the technical side to it, but was there anything that surprised you along the way?
It's taken us longer than I wanted it to. My team knows that too, and they're
That's
all
tech.
like, "That's tech." I think our team has found that developing on Solana, the tooling and resourcing on Ethereum is better. And I think it's actually something that Ethereum people should recognize. Like, there's pretty good dev tooling on Ethereum. A lot of people have been building on it for a while. Solana's been catching up, but it's still behind. I found that a little bit surprising to hear my team um, share that. And the other thing, like the actual programming paradigm is quite different. Like the way Solana programs function, it's meaningfully different in its architectural construction than Ethereum. And I thought that it's interesting when you get your hands dirty and kind of look at that. You're like, okay, this is just a different way of doing things. And it does showcase kind of like sure they're both blockchains, but they really do function in significantly different ways that are meaningful at a technical level.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. Our last two questions, you probably already know what I'm going to ask, but what is something that you're watching right now that you think others should pay attention to?
Oh man, I'm watching the world right now. I'm watching like macro markets.
Right.
Uh,
That's another
you know,
podcast for another day.
Yeah, and it's funny because again, we're recording this now, and whenever this gets released or whenever people listen to this, we don't well, no, don't know what the world's gonna be like. But it is kind of funny, Jackie. Like I started my job as a treasury bond trader at Goldman Sachs for 8 years, trading like the treasury bond basis, which it's so funny when you hear this in the news. And just the understanding of like the US Treasury market and what's going on, and like de-dollarization and all this other kind of stuff too.
Mhm.
Um, so I find that kind of like intellectually very interesting. I also think it is crypto relevant. Like I think
Yeah.
Bitcoin as digital gold in this environment seems really relevant. And then stable coins too, as just like the way of transacting, really, really cool and interesting.
Mhm.
So, you know, I think I'm quite I think it's worth watching payments generally, like what's going on with payments, how are people going to make payments, um, what's going on with sovereignty, sovereignty of your own. Sovereignty seems to be a big concept right now, so sovereignty of your own assets seems very interesting and relevant. And I'm not like a bunker or doomer kind of guy, but I think it's really worth noting that many of the principles and values that crypto espouses are like feel very relevant in the current climate.
How do you think Ethereum plays into that?
I think Ethereum is still one of the things that I think is underappreciated is if you're like a corporation or a big entity that wants to like do crypto, having your own blockchain is really nice. And if you're going to run your own chain, you want to run it as an L2.
Mhm.
Um, I think Ethereum
The most
is
common way.
still,
Yeah.
yeah,
Mhm.
I think Ethereum is going to be really well positioned as just like the place to host your blockchain. Um, and more work needs to be done to figure that out, like a lot of the interoperability stuff, like literally what Across is working on. But I think Ethereum like has solved scalability in a sovereign way really, really well. And I think that that is like powerful. Um, that said, if you're a normie user trying to buy meme coins, like there's still some UX work to
Yeah.
get done.
Last thing, Hart, can you leave us with a piece of advice? You got to give us a new one, though.
I can't remember the last two. It'd be funny if I said the thing that I've said last time.
What's the piece of advice you would have after this experience? Let's go with that.
Timelines here are always very interesting, right?
Mhm.
And I think there was a lot of optimism around phase one of the timeline, which worked great. Phase two, we didn't really think about while we were building phase one. And so that part took us a little bit longer. But I don't know, just like trust a team, like long term, kind of like 6 months projects are really hard to build in crypto. And yeah, I don't know. Jackie, I love my team. I trust them a lot. And it's cool how we handle the tumbles together.
Okay. The advice is love the people you work with then, right? And
Love
trust.
the people you work with.
There
Trust
we
the people
go.
you work with. Yeah.
Amazing.
Thank you for
All right.
summarizing.
Yes, of course. And thank you for coming on. Absolute pleasure as always.
Always. Talk soon.